I have the largest Bridezilla story you might have ever heard. I'm not kidding, this Bridezilla managed to absolutely not only ruin her wedding, but ruin her life. It seems like just yesterday that when I was a little girl being led by my parents, now that little girl has various suitors coming after her hand in marriage. I'm the first daughter and child of my parents. We were 3 children, my younger sister, my younger brother, and I. My family and I, we lived an average life, and my parents compelled us to start fending for ourselves from a young age. The whole children were made to work in college. I worked my butt off during my college days, and my sister, who's a graduate, equally followed the same pattern, though she was more favored because of the way she carried herself. After my graduation, I went ahead and changed various jobs, and still could not find the kind of paying job that would help me attain to the heights which I wanted in life. It was while I was job hunting, I met my fiancé. My fiancé and I both met at the same firm as applicants who have been invited to come for the interview. I ended up being picked ahead of him, and though he still had to go on a job hunt for 3 months before he finally got his own job at a sawmill, we kept in touch. I've been having various suitors come from my hand in marriage, but none has really appealed to me like my fiancé. I don't know, he was like my kind of guy. Honestly, our ideology about life just aligned seamlessly. But the issue there was, well, he's not rich. I can say that he's struggling to live the average lifestyle. This was a thing of concern to me when he proposed because I was bothered about the 2 of us. How could we cope when we began giving birth, as I'm currently not even earning enough myself? I told my mother about the whole situation, and the only thing she was interested in was knowing if he was truly loved of each other. My mother said that money was not everything in a home. She acknowledged that it's important, but it's not the principal. After getting much of the pep talk I needed from Mother, I decided to ignore the other rich suitors and accept his proposal. We've been dating for 2 months when I brought him home to come and see my parents. At least he needed their permission to marry their daughter. My parents were accommodating. They didn't treat him indifferently because he was poor. I mean, why should they? They were equally poor too, so they had no right to demand that my suitor was rich. My parents asked my fiancé if he truly loved me, and immediately he replied in the affirmative. They gave their consent. Update number 1, 3 months later. Well guys, it's been 3 months since my parents gave consent. I'm happily married. My wedding ceremony, well, it did not look like that of a couple who were struggling to live the average life. And that's my younger sister Betty's doing. My husband and I were planning on having just a small wedding ceremony, because it's obviously that we just couldn't afford. But my younger sister Betty did her best to ensure that it was an absolute blast. Betty was out of college and she had a decent job that paid her more than I was actually making, but it was obviously too little to have funded the bills of the kind of elaborate wedding she threw for us. Right from when we were young, Betty has always been carrying herself in such a manner that commanded respect. This is not to paint either my younger brother or I in a negative light of any sort, but Betty went the extra mile to pay attention to how people perceived her. From her dressing down to the places where she was found, one would hardly believe she was the daughter of a father who was managing like most people. Betty, she would attend seminars where she would mingle with the rich folk. She blended in very well as she was equally polished. They say that you dress is how you address, and when I say Betty's dress gave her respect, it's clear that she always dressed with class. She soon began mingling with people of class as well, and that was how she gradually created her network of rich acquaintances through influence that she could use in getting things done, like getting a good job, a discount from companies owned by these acquaintances, which offered the services which she needed. This was how she was able to organize a one-of-a-kind wedding with little of our financial impute. This was the very reason why I loved Betty. She could go to length just to make sure that she gave someone dear to her something good. Although the downside is that she would also expect the same in return, even though it's not in your means to do so, all the same. My husband and I were just really grateful for all the effort my sister put in. After the wedding, which, by the way, was a blast, my husband and I went on a 2-week vacation at a resort, and as you can guess, my sister was behind it because, well, left for my husband and I, we would simply start living our lives in the 2-bedroom flat which had been rented. We returned from the vacation 2 days ago. I got a call from my younger sister, Betty. She sounded so excited, and it was not a result of the fact that she missed me at all. No, she was actually calling to tell me that she's gotten herself a boyfriend. Now my younger sister obviously has dated guys in the past, and the fact that this one, very one, got her so excited meant that he was special. And yeah, he was. Hey, he was super rich. Update number 2, 3 months since the last update. My younger sister, well, she's recently visited me to obviously gush about her new man. I was glad she came because I needed to advise her, as her older sister, on the need to get married for love and not just because somebody's rich. I'd barely asked if she loved this guy, to the point of spending the rest of her life with him. She blurted out loudly, "Yeah." My sister claimed she loved him with her whole life, and I smiled because I was not really expecting her to say no, though I knew she was just carrying away by his wealth, as she had not known him long enough to love him with her whole life. I just kept quiet as she talked about how highly influential and rich her boyfriend was. And then I proceeded to tell her about the peace and joy which I was enjoying in my own home. I informed my little sister that my husband and I didn't really have the money, but I would gladly give up the money for the rest of my mind, which I'm currently enjoying in my home. My younger sister, Betty, became irritated, and her next response was something far from polite. Betty told me straight to my face that the fact that I'm married, and I'm currently enjoying peace from someone who's poor and struggling to survive in life, did not mean every other person had to marry somebody who was neck-deep in poverty before they could also enjoy a happy home. She claimed that there were good men out there, men like her man, who was rich and still gave their wives the rest of mind. Her response really cut me deep. I knew my husband was struggling to make ends meet, but she did not have to rub it in my face by calling my husband a poor man. I was still trying to swallow the insult when she landed that I would refer to her as the final blow. She then suggested that the fact that my husband was loyal to me and not giving me any issues now could be the result of, I don't know, him not having any money. But at the moment he became rich, his attitude could most likely change towards me. Now my sister's words were true, but the manner with which she had presented her point was really offensive. All the same, I chose to mature back and not pick offense. I asked her when she intended bringing him home to show the family, and to my surprise, she said that she's been disturbing her for some time to bring him to her family. I was shocked at this revelation because if this guy is who he said he was, and he was desperate to meet with us, then it meant that he wanted to take my sister very serious. I currently asked my sister what her reason was then for stalling him all this while, as she said she needs a loan. The expression on my face told me her no that I found her excuse really stupid. What on earth did my sister collecting a loan have to do with bringing her man to the house? I got angry when she told me that she needed the loan so that she could renovate the house where our parents lived before bringing her man. How silly. I'm not against renovations of homes, no. Of a truth, the house which my parents lived in could definitely use some renovations, here and there, but it's not nearly as bad to the extent one would say it was not presentable. My sister just wanted to keep up the impression which she had been putting up all these while. I tried making her see that she was going overboard with the whole self-packaging, as she called it. Why go through the stress of collecting a loan, just to make an impression of a guy who was not even married to you yet? Would he just decide against getting married to her if her people lived on the streets? I asked my younger sister how she intends paying up the loan, and she said it's not going to be an issue because once she gets married to her rich lover, well, she would have access to enough money which she could easily pay it off. Some people may see my sister as a clever strategist, but I felt it was stupid because she was about to go in debt. The whole fake it till you make it thing could turn around and bite her in the butt because it's more expensive to maintain a lie. Life is just so simple when you don't try living so many lies and above your means. If you can't afford a plane, get a car. If you can't get a car, get a bike. If you can't afford one, get a cab. A guy should always love you regardless of your financial condition, and vice versa. What's up guys, Mr. Reddito here. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Update number 3 is about to come out, and it came out 4 weeks after the last update. If you're not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor and click that big subscribe button if you want to see some more stories, and let's hop into update number 3. It's been 4 weeks since I've last updated, and my sister's relationship is currently in jeopardy. And this isn't because of any house or failure on her part to package herself right. No, she's gone ahead against my advice to successfully secure a loan to renovate our family house in preparation of her boyfriend's visit. She insisted we all look sophisticated the day he came, and her reason was simple. We needed to look up to date. I know it's insulting, but we just had to go with the flow so she doesn't blame her failure to get married on any of us. Her boyfriend, true to what my sister has been saying, he was quite polished, honestly. Polished and loaded. My sister was definitely lucky. From what I saw, I deduced he was into my sister, and Betty really was not going to let this one go down the drain like the others. She's too clingy for that, and my parents, my brother, and I all found it disgusting at some point. She's just all over him. My father would throw a question at him, and she would be the one to answer. I'm sure the guy definitely felt uneasy at some point, though. He did his best to not express it, though. My father finally asked the same question which he had asked my husband when he came to declare his intention towards me, and that was this. If the young man loved my sister, or if that he just needed a temporary fling. The rich fellow clearly told my parents that he valued my sister and hopes to make her his wife someday. It was then my father consented to them dating. After he left, my parents called my younger sister, Betty, into the presence of my brother, and, well, it's to admonish her. And what they said was basically what everyone had in mind. They started by telling her of the need to not let money be a deciding factor in her choice of a lifetime partner. A lecture I had earlier given her. My parents had begun advising her to loosen her grip on him a bit, as she was most definitely being too clingy, authoritative, and evenly demanding. Something that had caused her to lose her previous relationships. My sister's not one easily to take advice. She immediately began defending clingy actions as standing up for her man. Somebody needed to tell her to let her man be a man. I, for one, knew that the only reason why she was acting that way was to let the other ladies know who owned him. It was her way of a jealousy guarding. My parents did not say anything further. They just let her be, and she finally learned her lesson later on. My sister Betty paid me an unexpected visit last week, and she was in tears. I asked her what the issue was for about 20 solid minutes, and all she kept saying was that she was finished. After calming her down a bit, she told me that her super rich boyfriend had asked that they took a break from the whole thing. I knew that he would not just suddenly decide to put things on pause with my sister. Something must have happened. I inquired from my sister, and she said that she dropped by his office that afternoon and met him having a meeting with a lady. She decided to wait in his office, and while they went about their business, only for her lover to suddenly tell her that he needed some space. Her story did not really go down well with me, as I suspected there was way more to it. However, I tried being the big sister as usual, but Betty insisted that I spoke to Alfred on her behalf, and she gave me his phone number. I called Alfred 2 days later after I suspected that his anger must have died down a bit. He was really cheerful and glad on the other end of the phone when he discovered that it was I. I told him I was calling as regards my younger sister. Betty and he invited me to come down to his office so we could talk in person. I got to his office that afternoon and told him how Betty had come to my house crying 2 days previous. Alfred was rich, but yet he was humble. He began explaining to me how my sister would show up unannounced to his office, to his house, and she would immediately start offering opinions about female staff. These are her opinions, which she voiced was soon turned to demand when she discovered that he had not yet fired the staff. How could my sister go around and try to push away every female from this man? I knew it was just her jealousy getting in the way again, but what she failed to understand was the fact that her lover Alfred knew these lovers before he even met her, and yet he decided to date her. Why else would a reasonable lady still behave so erratic? Alfred finally told me his own version of what transpired that afternoon between him and my sister, and I felt embarrassed. My sister actually got to his office that afternoon, saw him having a business meeting with a lady who represented a firm that had been his long-standing client for years. She soon verbally attacked the lady on the notion that she was making advances on her man. Alfred noted he had to intervene on time to avoid Betty physically assaulting his client's representative. It was after the lady had left that he asked my sister to give him some space. Alfred acknowledged that he genuinely loved my sister, but he had to take some time to decide as her authoritative, demanding, and clingy nature was beginning to choke him alive. I don't really blame him, to be honest. I would never date my sister if I was a guy, and she was the only girl in the world. All the same, I had to look for a way to salvage the situation. I told Alfred that my sister's actions were wrong, as she's supposed to trust him and all, but I equally pleaded with him to look at it from the standpoint of love. I tried convincing him that my sister was so in love with him to the point that she could not stand the thought of losing him to another lady. That was obviously the reason why she had been so clingy. I assured him that it would not happen again, though, as I was certain that she's learned her lesson from this. I left him to think about it while I headed towards my family home to give my sister some peace of mind. She had lied to me and almost made me look like an absolute fool. I met her anxiously awaiting my arrival, and, well, she needed to know what my conversation with her boyfriend had yielded. I blasted her for hiding the entire truth, but that was not all. I made her understand that Alfred was a man who had not given her any reason whatsoever to doubt his intentions towards her. She should not just come into his life, expect him to drive away every woman that's been around him before she came. Most of the successes resulted in the fact that he worked with capable hands, ladies inclusive. I guess my younger sister finally learned her lesson about being too clingy, demanded, and, well, authoritative. We're currently waiting and hoping that Alfred would reach out to my sister to patch some things up. Update number 4. Hey guys, sorry it's been a while since my last update, and I can say my little sister Betty is just a wonder. Alfred finally reached out to her after 2 weeks solid, over in the hopes that she would actually think things over. The 2 weeks were a period of suspense for my sister. After they both patched things up, my sister straightened up for a while. Alfred was apparently pleased with the change, and he proposed to her a few days later. My sister was obviously overjoyed. Her efforts had finally paid off. She was going to get married to a rich guy and would finally have money to settle the loan, which she had taken out to renovate her parents' place. Alfred threw her on engagement parties, and plans for the wedding had been underway for quite some time now, and my sister insisted on handling the whole thing. Well, I did not expect her to sit back and let someone else do it. According to her, no one else would be able to do things the way she wanted them done. So far, I don't really think it's a good idea letting Betty plan the whole thing, as it seemed to bring up the whole attitude that almost cost her the relationship. Her wedding plan, well, it's exorbitant to say the least. Maybe because she was not the one footing the bill. I'm of the opinion that nobody who toils for his or her money, no matter how rich, would blow it off stupidly like my sister was. I thought about talking to her about the whole excessive spending, but the last time I tried advising her ended up with her calling my husband a few poor fellow struggling to survive, so I kind of minded my business. Though I knew that her overspending lifestyle was a major turnoff for her fiancé Alfred. It turned out that I was right. Alfred soon tried calling her to order, as the expenses were just too much. But rather than adjust, she told Alfred that a wedding day is a lady's day, and a lady should be left to do the things her way. Alfred was forced to let her squander his money in the name of preparing for the wedding ceremony. As for my siblings and I, we knew we had to get our sister Betty something really nice, as she would be expecting it, but the truth of the matter remains that things have not so been good. My brother, who's the last child of my parents, is still in college where he works to support himself, and so he was really not likely to be able to get my sister something expensive. And that is very much understandable. I encouraged my little brother to not go into debt simply because he wanted to get Betty a gift. She would very much understand that he's in college. Whatever he could afford would be appropriate. I discussed with my husband, and though it's not going to be easy as I'm currently carrying our first child, someone that we need to prepare for ourselves. We're still trying to figure some things out. We just had to because we felt indebted that my little sister for the way that she's actually helped out during our wedding. We decided this, that we're both going to get salary advances for the next month in order to meet up. I just hope we'll be able to pull through as we have less than 3 weeks to get ourselves together. Update number 5, final update. 3 months have passed since my last update, and though my sister is supposed to be married to a rich and influential guy, she's currently single and neck-deep in debt. Don't make the mistake of feeling sorry for her as it's her own doing. Rather than organize her wedding, she organized her shame and downfall. After money had been thrown into the wedding preparations, the wedding day finally arrived, and I don't think I'll ever come across such a more elegant wedding ceremony as long as I live. And this is not just me speaking. Virtually everyone present that day were having the same opinion. Everything about the wedding cried money, money, money. Betty's wedding dress alone was within one of the regions of $8,000 to $10,000. The wedding was being held by a prominent media house in the country, and Betty actually had someone live stream the event to her YouTube page. My family and I were still compelled by Betty again to look so sophisticated like the rich folks who were present. She claimed it was also blending them in. Well, my parents invited some of their not-so-rich who showed up in attires that did not really blend in well, and the look of disdain on Betty's face was absolutely epic. The party moved on well, and after the whole eating and drinking went down, it was time for presentation of gifts in the couple. It was at that time that all heck broke loose. Betty would lighten up some when someone came up with an expensive gift. My husband could not make it to the wedding as he was on duty at work that day, but he and I decided to get my sister a MacBook Pro, which I would say cost a lot when you look at what we're coming from. As for my brother who was in college, he just got my sister a gift card for an international flight. He had informed me beforehand about the gift, and he got for my sister, and I was very much impressed at the length he went to please her, because I knew he was still a student who was working to keep up in school. The international flight gift card was quite expensive. I knew my sister would love it, or so I thought. We were expecting the face of our sister Betty to lighten up a smile the moment we gave our gifts, but the opposite happened. She absolutely blew up in anger. Betty was mad that all we could get her was a MacBook Pro and the international gift card. She began calling my brother and I bitter names. The embarrassment I got that day has been the worst so far in my entire life. My sister just got mad and began rehearsing to the hearing of everyone how she had helped to anchor my marriage and how she went to great lengths to just make sure my, quote, wretched poverty-stricken husband, as she put it, and I had the marriage of an absolute lifetime. But now it got to her turn, and I refused helping out with the preparation, and to make matters worse, I got her something so meager on what was supposed to be the best day of her life. Our younger brother, he wasn't spared either. She equally made everyone know about their sacrifices that she had been making for him, and all since, he got into college. She said that we did not love her enough, otherwise we would have gotten her things of value, actual value. Now, I love my sister. We all did, and we've tried in our littles to see her over time, but I don't know. This is her character of expecting to have the same gestures done towards others reciprocated was now going to ruin things for her 100%. How could she quantify or measure our love by maternal items? I mean, there's other ways of expressing love besides getting someone an expensive gift on her wedding day, and my family and I never failed in expressing our love to our sister over the years and the little years that we could. To start with, she would not have gotten as far as the marriage altar with Alfred if I have not gone to speak to him or her on her behalf. And when I discovered from my discussion with him that she lied to me, I was still not to disclose the fact that she was an absolute liar. Now, I still found means to downplay her obvious immaturity actions as simply coming from a place of love. It was my discussion with Alfred that got them back together, and here she was talking about not loving her. As regards to helping her out with the wedding preparations, I didn't bother asking because I knew my younger sister well. She wouldn't want me to be involved, as she possibly felt my standard of doing things was below par. She said it herself. She didn't even let my plan or let me do my own wedding, and so it's only logical to think that she wouldn't want anybody's assistant planning hers. Finally, my sister was really stupid and insensitive to call the gifts which we had gotten her worthless. It seemed the whole living up to date had gotten into her head, to the point that she somewhat forgot that unlike her, we, her siblings, were still struggling to make ends meet. And so what she called worthless had actual cost to us, and it cost a fortune. Besides, it's not the size of the gift that matters, it's the heart which it's given. My sister was already creating a scene, and neither my brother nor I wanted any part of it. And so we just turned out to leave in order to avoid further embarrassment, but she abandoned the other gifts to come for us. How pathetic. My mother, at this point, had come in just to calm her down, but the whole thing simply aggravated the matter. She began talking badly to my parents, too, for bringing their poverty-stricken friends to her wedding ceremony just to come and fill their empty bellies. My sister, she went berserk. The pitiful part was that the whole thing was being covered by a prominent media house, and it's being live-streamed to her YouTube page for public views. The embarrassment was massive, an embarrassment that was not just felt by my siblings and I, but Alfred as well. Yeah, he tried calming his own bride down, but she acted like he was not even present. I felt pity for Alfred, to say the least. He did not deserve what he was getting that day. His parents, with our dignitaries, were all present while his bride was being rude to people simply because of an obsession over a gift. It was painful. My parents, my brother, and I left the party, and most of the guests began leaving in the droves. Alfred couldn't take it anymore. After most of his friends and family left, he abandoned his bride there in anger right at the altar. It was then it dawned on my sister that she was screwed for life. The news which we later got was that my sister cried uncontrollably that day, as she just lost both her parents, estranged to her family, and now deep in debt simply because she was no longer having access to pay for the loan, which she had collected as Alfred had immediately filed for divorce. With everything that was witnessed that day, she got absolutely nothing. To make matters worse, her polished image, which she had put up for society, was scarred by the public forever for her stupidity on display right on her wedding day. I'm sure it would be difficult for her to get hooked with rich, influential folks after this one. Well, that's the price she's currently paying for being a bridezilla on her wedding day. I'll be honest with you guys, this bridezilla might rank number 1, not just for how toxic she was, but her stupidity level was absolutely through the roof. I don't know how she thought that treating people this way would work out in the long run, but all it did was alienate her from her family and make her lose the guy that she said she loved. Let me know if you guys have ever known somebody like this, who was so selfish and just wanted for them. Drop your comments down below, guys. If you're new to the channel, this is your first time viewing, hello, my name's Mr. Reddito. I read stories every single day of some of the most dramatic stories I can find on the World Wide Web. If that sounds like something you're into, consider subscribing, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Have an amazing day.